To our non-Lebanese friends and our friends in the international media, the Lebanese people are not resilient. We are occupied and oppressed. The term resilience is used by this political regime to ensure their continued political survival. These are leeches who suck on the blood and on the plight of the Lebanese people to ensure that they stay in power, no matter the cost. To give you some context, in 1990, at the conclusion of a 15-year civil war, military leaders and sectarian warlords removed their military jackets, put on their suits and ties, and joined government. They granted themselves a general amnesty, absolving them of all crimes that left thousands dead, displaced, or missing until this day. Those same warlords are still in power today, robbing the Lebanese people of a chance of holding them accountable. In the middle of the 90s, Lebanon was subjected to harsh economic expansion plans that completely disintegrated the middle class, leaving Beirut in the hands of private powerful corporations owned by those in government. The Lebanese people couldn't fight back because our parliament votes in private, murky ways.
صوت مع التصويت لكن مع إعطاء الفرصة لأنه هذه بتوصلنا لكارثة، إعطاء الفرصة للرأي العام يعرف مين صوت مع ومين صوت ضد. ما فيني عم نصوت على $2 مليار. أنا مش عم بشتغل للرأي العام، عم بشتغل الآن للرأي العام ولغير الرأي العام، عم نشتغل نظام داخلي.
We have no idea how our representatives vote and therefore have no chance of holding them accountable. Those practices are still done till this very day because our head of parliament is still in power from 1992 until now. That's not resilience, that's occupation. In the 90s, Lebanon was occupied by the Syrian forces, leaving us to live in a police-like state where we weren't able to speak out about the injustices that were faced by our people.
كانوا حاسين حالهم إنه كانوا كوبابل حتى إنه عم بوقفوا شباب. وليش إنه عم يتوقفوا؟ لأنه نحن عم نطالب بشي حق.
Lebanon was also occupied by the Israeli forces who committed brutal war crimes. In 2005, Lebanese Prime Minister Rafiq Hariri was assassinated in the middle of Beirut. An assassination that sent the country into complete political turmoil, but also proved to be a catalyst for a historical movement where the Lebanese people moved to remove the Syrian army from Lebanon. It was a historic moment that was hijacked by those same military warlords to advance their own political agendas. In 2006, the Lebanese were dragged into a war with Israel that they didn't ask for. Because of military skirmishes conducted by Hezbollah at the border, Israel's retaliation was one of brute force, completely destroying the Lebanese infrastructure. In 2008, sectarian skirmishes flared up around Lebanon. And under the guise of protecting us from yet another civil war, the sectarian warlords and the militants occupying our government all agreed on a new power-sharing consensus in our government, completely robbing us of any share of democracy, making sure that they all get a piece of the pie. In 2013, our parliament unconstitutionally voted to continue its mandate, voted in murky and dark ways, again leaving the Lebanese people renderless at the hijack of one of their state institutions. In 2015, the Lebanese were faced with a garbage crisis. We went down to the streets and we protest that those who cannot protect the people from the basic toxicity should not be in power. And we were welcomed again with oppression. In 2016, a grassroots Lebanese movement arose to be able to win in our municipality elections. And the same political regime that on the media channels attack themselves all aligned to ensure that this movement was crushed in ways that are not necessarily democratically transparent. In 2018, after this political regime agreed on a new electoral law that ensured all of them would win, we had our elections. We had our elections in a way that, once again, there is not necessarily any democratic transparency in how those elections were conducted.
I want to know what happened between yesterday and today, and why today, in the registration committee's room, our delegates and the election monitors were sent out, and they closed the door with the excuse that the system went down for an hour. What happened in that room for the results to change? We need answers.
2019. Lebanon was subjected to forest fires that the Lebanese people were not able to protect simply because the Lebanese government didn't have the budget to maintain helicopters that they had only purchased 3 years ago. The Lebanese people took to the streets and asked for reforms. Reforms and a democratic removal and a peaceful transition of power. That movement was also crushed with tear gas, rubber bullets, and live ammunition to ensure that the Lebanese people do not get the reforms that they deserve and to keep that political regime in power no matter the cost. And 2020, Lebanon's capital and the lifeline of our country, our port, was blown up in our faces. And what does this political regime do? Not take responsibility, not take action, completely absolve themselves of the blame, throw responsibility at each other, and now we see them leeching on to foreign agendas and to foreign embassies to ensure their political survival because they feel the heat. The Lebanese people are not resilient. We have been oppressed, occupied, and we have been hijacked by a political regime that cares nothing about their people and only about their power. Do not treat the Beirut explosion as an isolated incident. It is not. It is the result of years of systematic corruption and mismanagement by the least competent people in our country. We are not asking for much. We are asking for a right to live a dignified life, for 24/7 electricity, for clean water, for a clean judiciary where we're able to hold those accountable, for a clear democratic process and the release of our state institutions. That is all that we are asking for. When we say keep talking about Beirut, we do not want you to keep sharing photos of the explosion, sharing photos of our trauma. When we say keep talking about Beirut, what we mean is to keep our support, to finally let us get rid of this political regime and allow for the Lebanese people to finally live the life that they deserve, to finally live and not survive. The Lebanese people are not resilient. We are occupied and we are oppressed.